So you
What
just,
is,
you just need to find.
Well, Ralph said it was Saturday.
Is my
oh,
mic
I
on?
never go in this way.
Okay. Can everyone hear me? Okay, good. I'd like to call our meeting to order. Today is Monday, April 27th. This is the regular meeting of the Board of Education, and we're going to also have a work session to discuss the budget. And Keith, can you go ahead and read the approval of the agenda?
I move that the agenda of Monday, April 27, 2015 Board of Education meeting be approved as set forth, and that each item is considered ready for discussion and/or action.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
This is a roll call action.
Director Anhalt. Director Witt. Director Rosenthal. Director Laverty. Director Humbles. Director Westerkamp.
Aye.
President Meisterling.
Aye. So now is the time and place for a public hearing regarding the 2015-2016 school year calendar and waiver request for a modified year-round school calendar for 2015 and 2016 for Taylor Elementary School. And Laurel, I ask at this time if you'd received any written communication.
We did receive approximately a dozen written communication emails from staff members of the district.
Okay, and how did you handle those emails?
They were teacher emails, and so I had forwarded them to Tanya Johnson for her response.
Okay, great, thank you. So would anyone like to come and address the board regarding our calendar for Taylor as well as our general school calendar? Seeing none, this closes out the public hearing. Thank you. Next, I'll turn it over to Dr. Benson for a superintendent report.
Thank you. Good evening. This time I want to congratulate Jefferson High School academic decathlon team. A team of 8 Jefferson seniors represented the state of Iowa in the national contest held earlier this month, and they finished 3rd in the nation. This marks the 18th time in the past 19 years that Jefferson has represented the state of Iowa at this national competition. So congratulations to all of the students, sponsors, and individuals at Jefferson regarding the academic decathlon. That's quite an accomplishment. Also want to congratulate the school communities of both Washington and Kennedy High Schools. Washington is the top-rated Iowa high school, and Kennedy is the second-rated Iowa high school on the Washington Post 2015 list of America's most challenging high schools. Both schools rank in the top 3% of American public high schools. The Iowa Big student-led project has led to design and installation of an urban fruit orchard at Knoll Ridge Park. Students worked in partnership with organizations and professional design consultants to create an orchard that features a variety of hardy, disease-resistant fruit plants. Yeah, they were not diseased when we put them in. And finally, just prior to tonight's meeting, we enjoyed the annual district recognition of school volunteers. Thank you for the kindergarten students from Coolidge for their delightful entertainment, and congratulations to all of our building volunteers. We want to thank all of the individuals involved in volunteering on behalf of our students and staff. We have a video wrap-up for this evening, which introduces the outstanding district volunteer.
Every school year, more than 7,000 individuals, including parents, retirees, community partners, and youth, volunteer their time to help support learning in our Cedar Rapids Community School District. Last year, over 132,000 hours were contributed, which was about the same as the district having hired 122 paraprofessionals to work 6 hours every school day. With so many individuals volunteering in our schools, the reasons are almost endless. However, the fundamental reason that people choose to volunteer in our schools is very simple. They want to help our students to be successful. School volunteers are passionate about education and are dedicated to helping children. I'm so very proud to thank each of our education volunteers for their dedicated contributions of time and talent. And I'm very pleased to introduce our 2015 Outstanding District Volunteer and Governor's Volunteer Award recipient, Scott Brown.
pictures?
You lugged all the way out?
Charlotte?
Okay.
Yeah, for pictures or what?
Well, do you still need to know how to do that?
Volunteering has been successful for me because somewhere inside of me there's something that's still very in touch with myself at that age. To be a good volunteer, you've got to have some kind of relatability. Since you're not in the classroom every day, you've got to find something that you know and they know that you could talk about and lets them know that you know part of their world. For example, my son and I watch cartoons and some preteen shows like on Nick and Disney. My son's 13 years old. So when I can come into the classroom and in between a lesson plan, have a conversation about something like a cartoon like Teen Titans or My Little Pony, you can see the light go off in their eyes, the connection's built, and you take it from there.
And so,
That's the kind of stuff you can come back and do at the end. Right now, let's get all of our information put down, okay?
Scott is an exceptional volunteer for many reasons, but one of the reasons I love him as a volunteer is because of his youthful spirit. He has a pierced ear and he's got funky color pink tie-top tennis shoes, so he doesn't look like your mainstream volunteer. He's just very up on news and things that the kids are into, so he's just always is current. I think that's the thing. When you're a current into the youthful generation, kids naturally then want to be around you.
The girls, a couple weeks ago, we started playing with the wood chips and calling them Chippy. And so they're their children, and we pick out the ones that are the coolest.
like this one.
My favorite part of the day would be recess. It's where you build up bonds. It's where you could talk about stuff other than the classroom. Especially as a volunteer, you don't have that full year, 6 hours a day to gradually build up these relationships. You've got to find something quick, a way to attach to somebody that you can get through to them when maybe they're tuning out. And recess is the one time, where it's not instructional. They can maybe tell you about their day, something they like, something maybe even that's bothering them. It's where you make the personal connections, where they can see you more as a person, so that then they'll have a little bit more, they'll tune into you more when you're in the classroom trying to deliver the plan, because they know you as a person.
You can see him in the hallways, redirecting students, holding them accountable. I think students really appreciate that he sets the same boundaries that teachers set. So he speaks a common language.
If I can be a memory in someone's life years from now, maybe the one good memory or maybe one of many, that causes them to take education a little bit more seriously than they otherwise might have, that's all you can hope for. And if someone can maybe just put a little bit of effort into something in middle school, or work a little harder at their job, or be a little more patient with their family when they grew up, if they can think back about how they saw an adult carrying themselves in stressful situation but still with a smile and still calm, if anything like that can carry over, those are life lessons, and that's what I like to get across around here.
I think Scott's in the room, so let's give him a round of applause. Okay, board comments. Yes, Gary?
Keith Westerkamp and myself, and Mary, you met with Ken Reiser on Friday he volunteered to come in and talk to us a little bit about his perspective of the funding for K-12. He's a representative from He's the state representative from parts of eastern Cedar Rapids and a good section of Marion. Brought in some charts, or constructed some charts, and tried to explain to us what he thought the position is, particularly from the Republican side. It was, I appreciate him coming in. There was some informational, but I think it comes down to just the fact of how they divide the pie up. There is funding, there is money there. It comes down to how they want to divide it. There was some talk about some additional being able to move off of 125, but for SSA, the state supplemental funding, but it would be one-time funding. I don't think that, the money is helpful, but it just helps dig a deeper hole, I see it, when it's one-time funding. It's tough to staff personnel off of one-time funding. You have it for 1 year, but what happens after that year? And if the funding isn't there, it becomes greater. So I think we shared some ideas going both ways. I think there are some things that could be done. I particularly think the Medicare problem, which seems to be a one-time funding problem because it became unexpected. To me, that would be a better way of using one-time funds because the problem won't replicate itself next year to the impact it is this year. He thought it was a good idea, but again, it has to spread to more than one legislator to do it. So I encourage parents, the public, to stay involved, to stay active. Without it, I think Dr. Benson's going to talk a little bit about more of what the impact will be. It's not good, and I think they have the power if they would just have the will to improve. So I don't know if Keith wants to follow up with any remarks, or Mary, if you have anything, but.
No, I think you summarized it quite well.
Okay.
So, thank you.
And we did have a chalk talk on Saturday. We had a few people come in. Good discussion, some good points. I know, Mary, you took some notes, and we'll follow up with some things. So that was the last one we had scheduled for this year, but certainly something we'll continue next year, and we'll get it out on calendars.
You heard that, Dave. I took some notes.
Coming my way.
Any other comments from the board? Okay, I just had a few. I did visit Crystal Saxton's Spanish class at Johnson Elementary this morning, and she does this in the fall and she does this in the spring, and she invites parents and visitors to come and just watch what happens in the classroom, and it was amazing. It's total immersion. Kids were dancing, singing, and speaking Spanish, and I just thought it was great. So thank you for bringing the Spanish program to our schools. It's being well executed in the classroom. I also wanted to thank everybody for working on the website redevelopment. It looks great, and each month it gets better and better and better. So it looks exciting and fun to be in this district, and I appreciate the work on that. Okay, next is communications, delegations, and petitions, and I do have a request from Lawrence Winkowski. Larry, if you could come up and state your name and address, and remember you have 5 minutes, and also remember this is time just to share comments. This is not a time for dialogue.
Please remember when we got Engaged CR on our this website for that. I was real excited about it. I thought up there it won some very good topics and conversations, but when we finally got rid of it, I was at a point where I wish we would have gotten rid of it a year earlier than we did. The reason I bring this up is that provided us a tool for communication and providing community feedback about different topics. And that one of them that I think we need some community feedback is for September 8th of 2015, which many of you are aware is the school board elections. 4 years ago, we had elections at all the typical voting sites, which was insanely too many. We went down to 5. Last fall, we went down to 4 of them, which when we have it at 5 and 4, I don't think that's enough. I think we need some other options. The reason I say that is if you look at the map that we have, almost half of the school district, and it's getting more and more populated, they really don't have no high schools or that out there. And so we need an opportunity, we need to come up with an alternative to allow more people to vote. The people who live on the extremes. Maybe it's the satellite voting sites. I don't know what the solution is. It's one of those things that there's not a perfect solution. There's just an opportunity for improvement. Another thing is another opportunity for improvement is, the parking, at least I know at Kennedy, I'm not sure how it is at Jefferson and Washington and at, but there's a lot of concern with the parking, and there's not enough room for students parking. And, there's different proposals being thrown around. But I think we have a long-term opportunity as a solution. And that has to do with, partly because we have this great relationship with our Parks Department, or the Parks Department of Cedar Rapids. And there is this park right across from Kennedy High School, Pierce Park, which, I've never seen anybody use the park. And maybe it's an opportunity for us to go with one of the agreements, buy it from them from $1, to sort of reciprocate us giving them part of our land, and turn that into parking lot. Also, I'm not exactly sure what the boundaries are, but it might give an opportunity to give more land to Pierce School. And that my children didn't go to Pierce, so I'm not exactly sure, but I think this is something to look for, an opportunity that we need to investigate for a long-term solution. And that short-term solutions, those are pretty much something the school's going to have to come up with. But I think that from the district perspective, that's where we can come up with a long-term solution. So that's all I have to talk about. So thank you very much. Good one.
Next is the consent agenda, and I'd like to ask at this time if anyone wants to pull something for separate consideration or discussion. Gary?
I have a question on 2 items. One is the open enrollment denials. I think it's 15008. And the other one is the HR report.
Okay, why don't we just go ahead and ask your question?
Okay. Give me just a second for me to pull them up.
Mm-hmm.
The first is the open enrollment. There are, we're denying 6. It looks like 5 positions. And the way I interpret it is that there's insufficient classroom space. We've been pushing, I know, for trying to get recoup some of our open enrollment or to get more students in. I'm wondering why we don't have room for these 5 potential students.
I think I
Sure.
can answer that, Gary. All 5 of those students are currently requested into our homeschool assistance program, and that program is currently full. There's a state law requires a certain number of students per teacher, per homeschool assistance teacher within that program, and right now we've reached the maximum on that. So
all of these 5 are specifically for?
Yes.
Okay.
There's also a March 1st deadline for open enrollment, so we have to, if a student does not meet good cause, we're legally obligated to deny open enrollment if it comes into the district after March 1st as well.
Okay.
So
But wouldn't these be for,
these are 2015,
even it has to be March 1st for
yes,
15,
it's March
16?
1st of the previous year.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, interesting. Homeschooling, many of them are somewhat at a distance from Cedar Rapids, so.
Correct.
Okay. The second is the HR report, and on it, there are 6 positions, that's where I got the 6, that were asked to hire with no positions to be determined. And I thought that we were looking at trying to hold hiring because of potential shortfall. And we're hiring 6 without a specific position. I know Dr. Benson had indicated maybe at some point we would have to or really need to hire if they were hard to fill, some science, math, and if we didn't fill them now, it would become extremely difficult. But these have no positions.
If you remember, we did this last year when we looked at some early hires at the elementary level, because we typically do have some openings. And when we hire early, we're able to get a better candidate pool. I'm answering for Jill, obviously she's not here today. So those would be 6 teachers that we could put into elementary positions. At this point, we have a large number of elementary openings, and you'll be hearing that later in the meeting. So that's one of the reasons that, and we did that last year as well, and we got, I think, 5 excellent candidates, so that are now part of our district. And so this was an opportunity in January and early February to both interview and then recommend for hire 6 quality candidates that we didn't want to lose an opportunity to hire. So, does that answer?
Well,
Yeah, as you will see later at the board meeting, we have sufficient openings to move forward with these hires and still have the flexibility we need to balance the budget.
Okay, I think it's important. I don't like to do it, but the fact is, if the funding is not there, that we may have to, we probably will reduce staff. And I think it's important that publicly it is shown that we have a reduction in staff if we don't have the funding that comes forth. So
We will not be reducing any currently employed individuals on the basis of reduction in force.
Right.
Any reduction that we will be doing will be from open positions.
Okay. Other questions or items on consent? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Please. Second. Roll call action due to the personnel report.
Director Witt. Director Anhalt.
Aye.
Director Westerkamp.
Aye.
Director Humbles.
Aye.
Director Laverty.
Aye.
Director Rosenthal.
Aye.
President Meisterling.
Aye. I do have one comment. We always see TBD on the salary, and we've talked about this before, and I think our board would prefer to see a salary amount in there with a caveat pending
Verification.
verification. So, just a comment.
Also, we have in our audience today Stephen Probert, who has just been approved for a new position. So congratulations, Steve.
Next is Iowa Learning Online. I'll turn this over to Mary Ellen and Carla.
Good evening. I wanted to provide you with a little information tonight about an opportunity called Iowa Learning Online. And what that is sorry, there we go. Ooh, he's clicking and I'm clicking. Thanks, Justin. Thank you. What Iowa Learning Online is a service provided in partnership with the Iowa Department of Education to Iowa districts to offer online courses. It's been out there for a little while, but they've kind of completely revamped it in this past year or so. And what they've done is they've moved from just offering a purchased or kind of canned curriculum to content that's really aligned with the Iowa core. They've increased the amount of student-teacher interaction that has occurred, and then they've also removed the cost to both the district and the student. So based on a result of those changes, we felt it was important for us to kind of explore this opportunity and make it available. And you can see there on the slide, it's a semester-based cohort, which now fits with where we're headed as well, which was another reason, and the tuition is important. So what's our role in providing this, and then what is Iowa Learning Online's role? So I'll talk a little bit about our role. All 4 of our high schools will provide a coach at the building level. That person, what that coach will do, they will unlock and proctor exams for students. They will not be providing the instruction. They will monitor the student's progression but not progress. So am I logging into my account? Am I regularly checking in? Because this is for first-time credit, so we don't want to let kids slip through the cracks. So they'll have somebody at the building they can touch base with. The instructor within Iowa Learning Online will monitor the student's progress. They will look at all the assessments, and they will communicate with the student as well. But this provides the student with another touch point at the building level. Credit will be awarded from our district based upon successful completion, and they've given some guidelines kind of for that depending on the courses. We will provide technology access for the students during the day, so if they want to work on that during the day, they can. Some of our students may choose that route, some may choose a completely out-of-school time period, and that's okay as well. We're going to kind of do a pilot, and I'll talk about that in a minute here, for the summer. So we are holding a parent meeting, so that will be a part of our role as well. And then program evaluation. So what's the success rate of our students within this online environment? Are we getting the right students into this? We don't want to put kids into an online environment and have them not be successful. So we really want to keep a handle and monitor that. What Iowa Learning Online provides is Iowa licensed and endorsed teachers, which is critical. And then they also require their teachers to go through a complete professional development series, teaching and facilitating in an online environment. And that's where students will be having conversations with other students from around the state, frankly, not just within our own district, as well as their instructor. And all of, as I said earlier, all of their courses are aligned with the Iowa Core, which is important. So we wouldn't move forward without that. Our pilot this summer, we're offering economics and U.S. government. So start dates are determined by Iowa Learning Online. May 18th is the start date for courses, which is prior to the end of our school year. So students will be able to work they'll have to work on their own pace, but they might be able to take some of those assessments at the building yet while the school year is in session, and then they'll come here during the summer to finish that. So we will unlock their assessments and proctor their assessments out of here for the remainder of the summer. As we move forward into the fall, we kind of want to expand that a little more, same two online courses, and then with the addition of trigonometry, which is currently a course we do not offer. Our students, trig is taught within some other courses, but we don't have a semester-based trigonometry course on its own. So we thought that might be a nice offering for some of our students. Questions?
Questions or comments from the board, Alan?
Look in your crystal ball. Where is this going? I mean, let's say it's 5 years from now. What does this turn into?
Well, they currently offer 40 different courses, is what they currently offer. I think I don't know, I guess, in 5 years exactly what it will turn into, but I think it will allow our students to have multiple opportunities. So if I want to take a full load of course and pick one up, I might be able to do that. Or maybe I choose, maybe I struggled with a course and I can take the second semester face-to-face. Maybe I can pick up the first semester as an online course. So I think there's a lot of potential for our kids to utilize the service.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Nancy.
I noticed that you said the Cedar Rapids School District would provide a coach.
Yes.
To each student. What is the selection process to
the coach does not have to be a certified teacher, and more than likely would not. Right now we have, so every building, every high school can select whom they think the best person for that is. That might be a media secretary, it might be currently who runs their credit recovery lab, it might be that person. And the role of the coach would be just kind of to monitor, did the student log in and unlock those assessments and proctor those. So they would not be providing any instruction, so they do not have to be a certified person.
Yeah, John?
Yeah, John.
Do we have the technology to support this in all of our high schools? And I'm sorry if I missed this, but what cost is there to the school district?
There's no cost to the district, no cost to the student.
Okay.
The technology, so the student may go, for example, if they choose to assign a period of their class day during the fall session to the online, the Iowa Learning Online. They may choose to go to the media center or the computer lab or whatever, and they may work on that class during that class period. We will not be sending technology home with students for that work. So that will be a conversation we'll have when the parents come. We've got some tools as well for counselors to use with students, so we're getting the right kind of kids placed into these courses so that they know that there's some independence with this, and just so that they're, is this a course for me?
Great, thanks.
What was the thought process? Why these courses?
Why
were
these
three
current courses?
particularly picked up?
We have been in the process of developing government. Well, we currently offer government online already within our district. However, it's in a trimester system. So that course would need to be completely revamped as we move to semesters. And so that's part of why. So that one's already offered, and we were in the process of planning to offer economics as well. So those two were already in the works. So we just kind of have transitioned that to Iowa Learning Online. The thought with trigonometry is just possibly providing another opportunity that we don't have in district for our students, because we do not offer that course as a standalone right now.
What's meant by financial literacy with economics?
That's the name of their course. That's what we call it economics. Iowa Learning Online calls it economics with financial literacy. So they'll embed some of those financial literacy skills within the curriculum they teach.
Gary, did you have a question?
No, I did, but it was answered. Thank you.
I was reading Trace's body language. How does this fit into BIG? Does BIG have any component of this? Come on, Trace. Yeah, you were signaling me.
We've been having conversations about that. Unsure at this point in
Well, I
time.
was just thinking from a fill the day moment. So someone's created their own curriculum, but they have some additional choices here, and it could grow into classes that they could take. That makes it more convenient because they're not the conventional student. So that's why I thought maybe you were signaling me. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think there's certainly anything that offers more options for our kids and our parents is a good thing, and we can make some things work there. And like you said, it allows students to accelerate if they want to accelerate, or frees up things in their schedule like BIG to do that, when they could take their government or their trig in the evenings or what have you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate the information. Yeah. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Paul Hayes to talk about transforming their school counseling program.
Thank you. As the board is aware, 3 years ago, we entered into an agreement with the National Center for Transforming School Counseling, and they were formerly part of the Ed Trust and have gone independent now. And the idea behind the professional development that has been provided for those 3 years is to engage counselors in conversations about the work that they're doing and what the work of a professional school counselor is. So tonight I'd like to introduce Tracy Gunther Yoke. Tracy is our learning supports facilitator and has been working with the counselors this past year and getting their goals and their action plans kind of wrapped up for this 3 years, and then has a nice plan for moving the work forward. And she's got some counselors with her tonight to present to you kind of where they've been and what their next steps are.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, if you three want to come up. This year we're really excited because we now have 4, 5, 6, 7 school counseling leaders who've helped really be excellent at helping us plan our professional development this year. And I think as we have these leaders at all of these all-day events with counselors, as you guys know, having your colleagues and peers share their experiences and work with their colleagues has been priceless. So first of all, also thank you to you three for being here tonight. Tara McLaughlin is at Metro High School as a school counselor. Lauren Hill is at Johnson Elementary, and then Brian Clark is at Harrison. So they're going to help present tonight. I would just also like to thank you for the opportunity to talk about this. It's been an exciting journey, but I think more so we also are excited about where we're headed from here. Ironically or not, this week concludes our direct work with the National Center for Transforming School Counselors. And we'll have a little invitation for you here near the end as a way to celebrate the end of that. So one goal today is to also talk about kind of where the direction from here. This was in a handout, I believe. Really, the 3 years, if I had to condense it into one statement, is really all about becoming data-driven, intentional, and targeted when we start thinking about our school counseling interventions. Even more importantly, though, and what's really impressed me is the ability or how well everything has aligned within a current system. For example, one thing that, of course, we always align with is our own professional ASCA standards. So we're always very mindful of our professional standards, but as we start thinking about how that looks within the framework of a PLC, those standards have really helped us answer that question. What do we want all students to know when we think about college career readiness? Also, when we start thinking about how do we respond when students do not know, we then think, okay, what about this tiered system of support that's in place? How does now what we're talking about parallel with this tiered system of support? And again, the biggest piece is using that data to drive that when we start thinking about tiered level of support. But then the data has also really helped us make sure that we're having equitable practices, identifying equity gaps, but then also really thinking about, we know that some students need more. And so what does that look like within that framework? And then lastly, when we think about existing systems, we've had a lot of really good dialogue about how do we parallel and align with Mike Maddos's idea of characteristics of effective interventions. And you can see as you look at this, a lot of the language parallels what we talk about with our TSC goals, Transforming School Counselors. We'll probably throw a lot of acronyms out. I apologize in advance if we do that. You know how that is in our profession. But anyway, you can see that they really do align, because ultimately our goal is we really want to make sure we have the right interventions in place so that we are meeting their needs. So, little comic break there. With that, I get to turn it over to Lauren. She's going to talk a little bit about the process of how we use data and then share an elementary example. So.
All right. So this we used a lot the past year when we started trying to figure out what goals we wanted to focus on, and we were pulling that data from. The far right-hand side are all those big ticket items I know you guys like to see huge improvements on. And so sometimes when we're looking at our schools, we're starting there and working back towards the left. So when we're looking at school GPA or looking at Iowa assessments or graduation rate, and then we go back and look at the achievement-related data to see what are those things that are affecting or will have a big impact on the GPA or graduation rates. So attendance will have an impact on graduation rates, so maybe that's what we need to focus on to help impact that. And then we can go back even further to look, is it, are the students, is it attitudes that they're lacking? Is it the skills, or is it knowledge? Because if they have the attitude and the skills, we don't want to be giving the intervention that it's directed at skills when they already have it. So we're trying to figure out which one of those pieces they're missing so we can target that and then go about that behavior change to get the improvement we're looking for. And a lot of that is going back to using those characteristics of effective instruction and trying to decide who needs to be targeted, who's going to do it, when's it going to happen, what is it, and then getting that data to see if we're having a direct impact on them. And if we're finding out that the majority, 80% of those students are lacking in it, then maybe it's not a student problem, maybe it's a system problem, or we need to change our instruction so that we're targeting the core. Because ideally, when we're making these interventions, it's that tier 2 and tier 3 process, and so we're wanting to look at those small groups and individual things. And so it kind of works both directions. So some of us maybe started on one side and worked towards the result, and some of us started on the results and worked backwards. But these were kind of the data places that we played around with to figure out what we were targeting and kind of where we wanted to go. With the elementary goal here, we had student-focused goals and system-focused goals, and so this is an example of a student-focused goal. And we framed it in a positive light. So in this one, we want to increase the number of students school-wide each trimester who do not have office referrals. So we're trying to have that positive frame when we're looking at that goal. And so they have from the 2012-2013 school year what the percentages were for each trimester and then what our goal was going to be. And this was brought about by our Power School and our Grantwood AEA referral system and trying to figure out how we can help those students. And it aligned directly with the school improvement plan, with those SEB goals that we have and kind of different, the PBIS program we have within the schools and the PART lessons. And so you can see for some of them with this school, some trimesters we had success, other ones not so much, but it made a nice improvement across the school year. And part of that goal, one of the action plan was to do, we looked at individual students, kind of our frequent flyers to the office, and we're working with 4th grade students with this one. So we looked at the number of referrals before the intervention and the number of referrals after it started. And it was a zones group, which is a curriculum that a lot of elementary schools used. And you can see the blue is before the intervention started and the green is afterwards. So there was really high success with this, and we've actually continued using that zones group in curriculum this year because it worked so well. But so this played in with the overall student goal. So in this case, we were targeting those individuals who are obviously lacking in the skill of having to, emotional control and management. And so we worked with those small groups to help them get those skills they needed to make the progress that would, and then help our other side with the office referrals with that. All right, and then I'm going to hand this over to Tara here.
I'm going to share a couple secondary examples with you. This is one of the secondary high school examples. This is Kennedy's goal, was to increase the number of completed post-secondary plans for African American students from 60% in 2012-2013 to 85% in 2013-2014. And they targeted this subgroup of students after seeing an equity gap. We went through training to actually identify equity gaps within our schools. And after they identified this gap in the post-secondary planning data, it showed that they worked on this and they met their goal. Here's an example of a graph that shows the career and college readiness task completion of the subgroup that they focused on. The counselors personally interviewed all of the students who did not have supports. The types of supports that they were looking for were specifically students who did not have like IEPs or PAC support. And in addition to showcasing the work that they did last year, they looked at the outcome data, and it led directly to this year's student or systems goals. So they focused on the work that they did last year, and then they helped that to drive the goals that they worked on this year. This year's goal was to have 85% of the targeted group complete 3 tasks, and this was all related to career and college readiness. Their data showed that 91% of them completed. So if you can take a look, some of the tasks were campus visits, resume completion, job shadow internships, AP consideration, and the I Happy completion, which is the I Have a Plan Iowa. This was one of the slides that Metro worked on, my school. One of our goals was to increase the enrollment in college credit-bearing courses by subgroups. And if you take a look, the blue is actually how many students we had enrolled this year, and the green is what we have enrolled for next year. So we had a 375% increase of our Caucasian students. We had a 200% increase for our Hispanic students and an 800% increase for our African American subgroup. So this is the type of information that you'll see in some of our presentations. But we think that this video will show you the real results. We have a couple students who'd like to talk about some of the things that they experience as a result of what our counselors do.
Amadeus, I've been taking welding at Kirkwood, It's actually done a lot for me. The advantages it gave for me is unbelievable. I can get better jobs and better career. The first thing I thought about the class was, wow, it's so different from high school classes.
Me personally, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was done with high school. Before I came here, honestly, I didn't even know if I wanted to finish high school.
Next year I'm taking automotive classes at Kirkwood. What it's going to do for me is going to give me one step further, and what I really want to do is mechanics.
They helped me take the compass test and the ACT, which ACT can even be expensive sometimes, which they helped me out with my fees.
It's what I've been actually wanting to do for a while. I found it more interesting to do it, and I couldn't get enough of Kirkwood classes.
Thanks to Metro, I get to take all this great stuff I've learned, and now I finally know I want to get into engineering when I'm done with high school. Next year, my senior year, my last year, woo! Get to spend some time, hopefully, over at the big school, working on physics, doing some language over there, maybe take some classes over here, hopefully. Then, after that, 4-year college, hopefully.
So we're hoping that you'll come out and see all of the work that the counselors in your district do. We have day-to-day celebrations on Thursday and Friday. You'll get to see a lot of really great presentations. The counselors in this district work very hard. We are data-driven. We do search for equity gaps, and we are the undercurrent. And we just work really hard, and we hope that you'll come and see the presentation. Thursday, April 30th, 8 to 11 is the first half of the elementary schools. 1 to 10:30 is the middle school and high school. Friday, May 1st, 8 to 10 is the second half.
Oh, for me. All right. Oh, shoot. All right, my hand's free. Well, I definitely got the easy part here. They had to share all the technical information about their goals and everything. At the national level, there are some monumental events and initiatives that occurred this past year. Arnie Duncan released guidance for districts on budgeting allowances to provide professional development for school counselors and information on where schools can go to find federal funding to support that effort. The partnership between the White House, ASCA, and Harvard hosted an event to discuss excuse me, how school counseling can bring about college and career readiness opportunities for students. Trish Hatch published her book about putting data to work in school counseling. A lot of that information ties very closely to what we've been doing with the Transforming School Counseling program the last few years. And the Cedar Rapids District school counselors will be using that book as our guidance for next year. And then the First Lady's Reach Higher goal is to inspire every young person to complete college beyond high school. Part of this initiative included the decision to honor a School Counselor of the Year. In addition, the First Lady spoke at the National ASCA conference this past summer. That's the Association of School Counselor, the American School Counseling Association, this past summer, and that was just another monumental event that drew national attention. In her speech, she recognized the important work of school counselors, things they do every day to help prepare students for post-secondary education. And she, in her Reach Higher initiative, she really focuses on school counselors and their role in that. Following her speech, the First Lady's Reach Higher Twitter page exploded with districts across the nation sending in their Reach Higher videos. And so we thought it would be fitting if we ended with our video of Cedar Rapids school counselors reaching higher. Right on cue.
That was outstanding.
First, I have to thank Justin for helping put that together. I, of course, did all the work of collecting the photos, and really, I know you can't read some of those, but it really does mimic the Twitter models that are out there, and so it's just more of the idea of having them hold their signs. But anyway, so thank you, Justin, for all his work. But that concludes our presentation, so if there are any questions?
That really
or-
was outstanding. We're thrilled because I'm not speaking for the rest of the board, I'm speaking for myself. I didn't think when my students went through school that counselors were as effective as they could be. And I know budget has a lot to do with that, but I'm glad to see that this program's taking off and in such a robust way. And we love data-driven decisions, by the way. And we love very specific goals that you had there. So this is outstanding.
Thank you.
Comments from other board members?
I'm just glad you're looking at the data. That's so important. And I too, with Mary, sometimes I question what counselors were doing. So thank you very much. This was great to see it.
I almost included on our slides, one of the almost mantras, if you will, that has driven this is we're changing the question from what do counselors do to how are students different because of what we do. And I almost included that. I should have.
John?
As a parent in the district, I can say that there are counselors that made a difference in my own kids' lives. So that's number one. Number two, I'm very proud of this district for keeping its commitment to school counseling. At the university where I work, I see what happens at other districts around the country where counselors are the first to be cut, and the workloads of some of the counselors in the country are just abhorrent, where they don't even know the students that they're working with. So kudos to the entire school community, the parents and the voters and everybody out there that helps support that initiative to keep counselors in our schools. And thanks for all the good work that you guys do.
Thank you.
Alan?
Yeah, this was very informative. Thank you very much. You only hear the bad sometimes about these stories, so this is very helpful. One thing I did notice that our counselor levels, based on those recommendations that were on that one slide, we're out of whack. We've got at least 1 to 2 counselors short, I know, at Washington, based on the numbers and quick math. And I always wondered about that if we just didn't, everyone has a good heart and they're trying to do a good job, but if they're just overwhelmed by the volume, they have to kind of pick and choose. And so I like this approach where you're focused on the student outcome. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Gary?
Well, again, it takes a village, and you are certainly a part of it. Certainly appreciate the work. I go back to the funding and the frustration that we're seeing more need and less ability to be able to meet the need. Appreciate you sharing the data, sharing the success. I wish we could be more supportive to provide you more resources.
So do we.
To provide our students. So it's, we have to continue to work on getting the message out and the good work. This is not extra. This is greatly needed work that needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us this evening and share your work with our district. Thank you.
Good
Thanks.
job. Thank you.
Okay, next I'm going to turn over to Laurel and Dave to talk about the policy manual review and revisions.
Thank you. Tonight, the Policy Review Committee has put together some policies, procedures, and regulations for your review. If you have any questions, we would be glad to address them.
Questions or comments? I just had a quick comment. Thanks for all the work. There are a lot of regulations here. How are these changes, if there are any, communicated with staff?
Once the board has reviewed and approved the policies and also looked at the regulations and procedures, they are communicated through email.
Okay.
In the summer, right before school starts off, we actually have a presentation on all the policies, regulations, and procedures with members of Executive Council.
Okay, great, good. Okay, let's move into a work session and talk about budget planning.
Yeah, one of the, just to amplify that, one of the annual pieces of business is the School Boards Association, the School Administrators Association and several law firms that do school-related work always put out legislative summaries. And so that really kicks off a lot of our policy review work. And I want to thank Laurel and the policy review team. Our policies are up to date. Every 5-year rotation, and we take a look at these things regularly. So Laurel, thank you, and please extend that to your team.
I will, thank you.
On the workshop issue tonight is the expenditures budget. We met our legal requirement by publishing a budget. We based that budget that was approved last board meeting on the 4% that was passed by the Senate earlier, which rendered a tax rate we believed was sufficiently high that we could fall within that by the time the legislature concludes its work. I want to communicate to the board and to the public how frustrating it is to try to build a program for next year from my seat as superintendent, not knowing at this late date an outcome that we could rely on that would give us some guidance. So consequently, we're going to see tonight 3 scenarios. One is the budget guarantee, which would come into place if the legislature does nothing. One is the House scenario at 1.25, and one is the Senate negotiated position, not the Senate passed position. The Senate passed 4%, but they offered in the negotiations with the House to go to 2 5/8, which is 2.625. And so I'm using that as the ceiling, and then we have the 2 lower numbers. We'll be putting this up on, and for members of the media, we do have it electronically. We could give it that way. The growth in state supplemental aid used to be referred to as allowable growth. Is what we're talking about here. 1% budget guarantee, 1 1/4 House position, 2 5/8 is the latest Senate position. I want everybody to know that when we start talking about these scenarios, we are in the season of negotiation with our associations and unions that negotiate. Because they have a professional negotiation statute that sets forth terms and conditions that we carry on these negotiations. And we have meet and confer groups that we are also either planning or in discussions with. So nothing that I say tonight is intended to indicate a position that it would be outside of the bargaining table. That would be inappropriate, and I want everybody to know that I'm doing these scenarios simply as a way of stating the extent of the problem, not making any offers or for any particular group. And when we get into this, I want you to know that when we say, and we're going to use for the purpose only of illustration, 3% settlement, and I want the public to know what the Board of Education knows from working with this, that's not 3% salary increase. That's a settlement of a package that includes many things besides a salary. A FICA Med, for example, insurance benefits. There have been several years in a row when IPERS, our retirement system, was increasing its contribution rate that employers and employees made. So I want people to understand these are simply scenarios. It is absolutely not intended to influence outside of the bargaining table the process that takes on. Okay. With that, let's put up the first scenario.
I didn't give it to him because I didn't know that's what you wanted, so I could get it, I'll be putting that up here shortly.
Okay. At your place, there is the scenario that is entitled 1% budget guarantee, no legislative decision, and a 3% settlement. At that, if we did nothing, you see that we have a $3.5 million decrease in our spending authority, which literally takes us to zero. As superintendent, I can't let that happen. I have to do something because we cannot allow that. So in all of these scenarios, items under incremental changes to budget, items number 1, 2, 3, and 4 do not change. They are the same under each scenario, which will lead to a different bottom line number. I also want to say before I get started that these numbers are subject to change. This is somewhat of a moving target as we go through this. You will not see any number this year less than $10,000. In previous years, we put smaller amounts on there. That really doesn't really help us that much, so we're going to keep this at a high rate as we go through. So I'm going to start with number 1, instructional materials fee. The Board of Education 3 years ago instituted a 3-year increase in instructional materials fees, and you can see that that's a $22,500 increase estimated. We have an increase from the equipment breakdown insurance that we approved last board meeting, and that increase to the budget is $128,000. And then we have an increase in an open enrollment for the teacher leadership grant program. And if anybody can see that at home, well, good luck. Of $41,000, and the just as a way of explaining, the teacher leadership grant money floats with the students, so we net lose students to open enrollment. So on the known expenses, item number 4, you're going to see a corresponding number, which is the net out number. So total revenue increases of about $200,000. General fund savings number 2. And before I cover that, I want to say thanks to all the counselors for being here. Wasn't great timing on my part to have a wonderful example of what we're doing in counseling and then cover this issue, but you know, it is what it is, so we'll go through it. Higher down savings, 8-year average. Higher down savings is the savings between people going out and people that we hire coming in. That's an average, and that's a placeholder. Will this be an average year or above average year or less than average? We don't know, but an 8-year trend line's a pretty good number, we think, to work with. Our teacher leadership program was oversubscribed this year in our kickoff year. Our committee has done great work in getting that back into balance, and you'll see that we're going to balance that with $500,000 back to the budget that we're currently spending on teacher leadership that will be available for general fund expense. And then the counselor retirement savings, we have 2 positions that right now we are considering not filling, and that's $164,000, and that general fund budget savings to date is just in excess of $1 million. Item number 3 has 10 items on it. Energy Saving Initiative, we are spending some resources in PEPL to advance a energy savings program, and we will be reducing our energy budgets by $200,000 and making that revenue available. And all of these budgets are controlled here at the ELSC, or they are administrative savings. Purchase service, that's Tom Day's shop. That's a realignment of personnel, an FTE reduction, and sharing of the workload from existing individuals. Technology realignment savings is a realignment of duties based on some staff turnover. The big administration realignment savings was a staff position. Number 5, transportation savings is a staff position, a utility driver that will not be filled. Purchase service savings, we have changed our vendor for copying, and we are generating a $44,000 annual savings. Buildings and grounds realignment is a savings from personnel. OLL realignment, and the teacher leadership realignment were linked in terms of the positions, so we did net some dollars there. Executive council package reduction, we have a executive council meet and confer group that I met with this afternoon. We're putting a placeholder of $360,000 for executive council reductions, and we'll be bringing a recommendation forward on that. And then we have an administrative reduction of a 1.0 health service manager position. So that's something just north of $1 million in administrative / district office budget savings. Those are the revenue and savings pieces that we have identified so far. On the new and additional programs and services that we know about, and we think this is a pretty comprehensive list, we have 1 more year of Spanish implementation. We are recommending that we start the middle school SRO program for the school resource officer, which is CR Police Department paying for 1 and the school district paying for 1. The regional center, we continue to have interest in regional center, and that is increasing, so we're putting a budget placeholder there for costs for the regional center. And the item 4.4 is the increase in open enrollment out net cost, which are calculated to be $130,000. And under the notes, you see there are some notes to explain that. The next sheet is the House position. Well, excuse me. So the net is $1.75 million that we're short budgeting to reach the goal of a neutral budget. The next sheet is the House position at 1.25 and a 3% settlement. Again, items 1, 2, 3, and 4 do not change. And because we're starting at less of a deficit, we have a $1.5 million problem if the House position is ultimately passed. Okay? The next sheet is the Senate position of 2.625. And at that deficit, to the work that we have done and identified really about something over $2.2 million in revenue and savings. We net $672,000 to the allowable growth, to the budget under the Senate's position. So those are the three scenarios. Where's the truth? I don't know. That's my frustration. I knew where the truth was. That would make it a little easier for me to make more concrete plans. The next item I'd like you to see is the general fund certified openings.
It's coming.
Yeah. Middle school, elementary school, and high school. And you can see that we have quite a few openings across the district. And these are positions that we have held on. We have hired some positions, and as was noted today, we've hired 6 elementary teachers against this list of openings that are unassigned at this point. And the next issue I would call your attention to is the classified staff openings.
He's just getting to the certified now.
Now that's the certified. Then we have the classified staff, and we have over $340,000 of classified positions that are open that we have not authorized to be filled. These are possible positions that we could work with to help balance the budget wherever it's going to land. As I said, the budget is subject, the incremental changes are subject to change. It is all a kind of a moving target at this point. There's 2 things that I would anticipate you would ask me, and then I'll be glad to open it for questions. One, what are the priorities? And I understand that question, and I want to let you know that obviously the scenarios in items 1, 2, 3, and 4 express some priorities in terms of budget revenue, budget work that we can do to reallocate funds, and programming. So those are priorities, and they're reflected there. I think my second priority has to be classroom positions over non-classroom positions. Given a choice, I'll work with the classroom vacancies first and try to fill those and work with that. And in that, working with classroom positions, youth trumps age. We have a stated state public policy that by the end of 3rd grade, we're going to hold our students accountable for reading proficiently as defined by the tests that they're going to have to take. And so K-3 has to be considered my greatest priority. And that, I hope, helps answer the question that Director Anholtz asked earlier in the board meeting. We do have room for those individuals within that first priority. And then you move up the grade levels from youngest to oldest. And the second thing I would say is prioritizing is bargaining. I kind of started with that with the caveat that, this isn't a bargaining session and I can't do that. But I do want the board to know that every percent of salary for the total package is $1.4 million. So you and your direction to your bargaining teams can influence the outcome of this through bargaining strategy. And that is a fact that everybody understands, I think. So it is a issue this year because of the lateness. We are really getting up against it on bargaining. And should we ultimately go into any arbitrations, that will be later in the summer, and nobody likes that. It is not good for the district, employees, or our standing, having good labor relations for a number of years in this district. So that's an issue, and certainly the 3% was simply, as I said, a placeholder, and where we settle makes a difference on what we can do at the end of the day. So with that, I would be glad to answer any questions.
So before you ask questions, please make sure that you read the notes. They're very informative regarding some of the additions to program and cuts. So, okay, John.
I just want to say, first of all, I'm thankful and appreciative that you as administrators are willing to make cuts and feel some of the pain yourself. I think it's critical that the public and parents have some understanding of what this is, and so, again, I'm appreciative of you bringing all these facts up. We're really at the point, if the state legislature doesn't act, we get 0%, which goes into the 1% budget. Is that correct? And at that point, as I understand from Steve's last presentation, that could lead to local property tax increases.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
See, I think the public's not fully aware of that at zero, local Cedar Rapids School District dollars, property tax based, likely will go up. There's a good chance of that.
That's correct.
Okay. So at these other scenarios, so you're making all these things. My core thing as a board member is I want to protect the core classrooms, and I know you do too. There are things that we don't have a choice on, right, with special education, federal mandates, state mandates, the early intervention reading, and all those sorts of things. But we do have some choice, and this is going to be a little controversial, I'm going to say, I think, but there are some things that we can do that may be programs that are near and dear to our heart that will make a difference in kids' lives, but they're not core to teaching. And I think we need to go out to the public, and I'm urging us as a board to invite other boards, other administrators, Grant Wood, to have a session with the public to actually talk through what this means to our children, because they're my children that are feeling this right now. Spanish at the elementary level is wonderful, but it's not essential in my mind. Middle school SROs, I talked to the middle school principals. They've done it without an SRO. Would it be great? Is it the right thing to do? Absolutely, it's the right thing to do. Kirkwood Community College is making money on our programs. These are good programs for our students, but is it essential to have all of those programs? Does our state require it? No, they don't require it. Is it the best thing for our district? Well, sure it is, but all of that costs money above and beyond. And what I'm saying is, let's look at a moratorium on some of these things. If the state legislature, if our Republican House members, including our two local members, Craig Paulson and Ken Reiser, can't come up and push forward appropriate funding for our local kids, we need to start putting in some heat and having parents have some skin in the game here. And I'm really at that point. If it means looking at non-important athletic programs, music programs, let's have the parents with kids in those programs who are already giving out all those volunteer hours, putting in all kinds of donations to help those kids, but relying on us and our public funds to help support those, have some skin in the game. And I guess that's where I'm at with this. And I would like other board members to chime in on this, but I'm ready to bring this to the parents in a clear and unequivocal way that their kids are being hurt. We're hearing too much rhetoric that it's not going to hurt kids. It's all about teachers and the staff, and that's not the case at all. So that's my only comment.
Okay, other comments? Gary?
I have a question before a comment. Okay. On the on the general fund balance savings, the reduction in the TLC instructional costs, going down to 511, and I did read the note, but I'm still not clear. Does that mean, or what we're saying is that that the TLC is a state grant fund? Are we saying that we spent more, 500,000 more, 511,000 more than what the state grant provided us this
Yeah,
year?
I can speak to that. Yes, we did. We overspent that budget. When we were working on identifying those costs, 100% of the funds from the state, the 5.2 million, went to teachers' salary and benefits. So we did not use money for programming. We didn't use money for professional learning out of that funding. What we had estimated was 75,000, an average salary and benefits package for teachers of $75,000 when we applied for the funds and when we identified the positions. What occurred, and it was a good thing, is that we had so many highly qualified teachers that were wanting to take on more responsibilities as a teacher leader that we have some very highly educated and senior or veteran teachers in those positions, so that it did cost us more than the 5.2. We actually spent 5.7 million in compensation for teachers through the teacher leadership last year. We worked diligently with our teacher leadership advisory team and our OLL leadership team to look at the survey data that we've been provided about the teacher leadership system that we've most recently received, and looking at those positions and making sure that we put that in balance this year. We're being held harmless of the overexpenditure last year, but we will be spending only it's about $5.1 million this year. We also have less funds because of the open and roll out. It's $309 per student, so those funds go with the students. And each year, as more schools come on, year 2 next year and year 3 the following year, if we have students that are in those school districts that receive the funding, that's when the funds go with them, of course. So a couple reasons why that was overspent, and we're moving forward, and we have come up with one of the good things is that we really front-loaded teacher leadership last year, so that the additional days of training and professional learning for the teacher leaders occurred a lot in the summer. Teachers were very busy, and then additionally throughout the school year. So there are less days. So that was a natural progression, that teachers won't have as many training days, and that would make the cost less. We did eliminate a couple positions that were here at the ELSC, and we also have standardized some of the funding for the teacher leaders at the building. So that's a really long answer to your question, Gary. What, you're afraid to ask anything else, aren't you?
No. That will never stop me. I'm sorry, board members, we may go on. So, to phrase in my own words, then the teachers were paid per diem, not on a stipend.
I would have to say that our funding was very complex. Some teachers were funded on stipend. That would be when you were attending professional learning. If teachers served in additional days, they were paid at per diem. And we had some that were paid a certain percentage above and beyond. So it's a very complex finance system within the as you look at different positions. So some of the teachers do the work during their school day, during their contract hours, and they're compensated because of that teacher leadership position, while others work after hours, and that would be more of a stipend pay or a per diem pay. Or, there are just several different ways that, and it's even braided, that some person may receive. Some of our teacher leaders are paid a stipend rate for the work that they do, but then they're paid for their professional learning days, and they're paid for their time outside. So it's complex. We think it is, we think we're going to get better every year. I think with year two, we looked at some of the positions and how to compensate those. We have changed some of the positions and job descriptions. And so again, it's just a continuous improvement process that we're using to improve the system and to compensate people for what they've done.
What about, I know we changed a position this evening. What about our teacher leader, the coordinator, Steve Robert's position? How will that be served
position,
next
yeah,
year?
that position, what we're doing, actually there were two positions in the professional learning department that will be, we'll look at those things and those tasks that were in the job description, the things that those people did, and we will be reallocating those within the professional learning pod, the curriculum and development, and within OLL as a whole. So we are just taking some of those tasks, and administration will take on some of those, and other teacher leaders will take on some of those. One of the things that was great about that is the teacher leaders figured out that they were the ones that identified we could do this a little differently, which is great when the people in those positions are doing that. And they're working collectively with the administration to make those changes, look at job descriptions, how that should look different, how we can best serve the teachers in our buildings and the students in our classrooms.
Will that affect our grant and the way the grant was written, as far as did we have those positions written into it, and so will we have to have an adjustment or whatever?
Absolutely. Anytime that we make a change in the teacher leadership system, it needs approval from the state Department of Education. And last year we made some changes even before we started, and we thought we would hire some positions and we didn't, and vice versa. And so we receive basically we receive an approval from the state, and we have received an approval on the program that we're moving forward this year from the state. I provided the changes to them a week or so ago, and that was approved.
I have some comments, but if somebody else wants to talk, you can come back to me.
Other comments or questions?
No, I wasn't around in the days of physical education and art and music, but this wasn't there one time those were offered in the school building and they were just kind of like skinny down? Is this another approach like that? What John brought up before about the idea of foreign language. I mean, we have 7 foreign languages. Is that the path we're taking here, that we're going to eventually not have foreign language in our schools? I mean, that's what blows me away about all this discussion of where do we go with this information, Dave?
I certainly hope not, and that's not my intention. The issue is how do we organize the languages so that it can be efficient? And there are ways of doing that in terms of low number classes collapsing 3rd and 4th year students into one class, or through electronic means sharing between buildings, or ultimately, you asked the question, where are we going with the online? Ultimately, if we have successful experiences with online and they work for our students, then I think some of the specialty curricula that we have will go that direction. But right now, we are in this mode of delivery, and I see it changing slowly over time, certainly well past my career. The issue that we have is how can we be more efficient with the resources that we have and still have an effective curriculum. Now, chapter 12 sets forth, chapter 20, 12 sets forth certain standards, like on PE, art, music, curriculum, and we meet those standards. We exceed those standards in most areas. The question that John poses that I'm walking away from the table is, where we exceed standards, can we do something to become more efficient? And that we'll look at that.
Again, I think my comments are, I want the parents to have some conversation with us Grant Wood, other districts, because it's not just Cedar Rapids issue. This is happening across the board, so I don't know where we can move forward with that, but I would like more input, direct conversations with the public about them understanding these issues and helping us as a board decide where we want to go with these things. If they start to realize taxes could go up on local property tax, or some of those things near and dear to their hearts, which I think are wonderful as well, if those aren't core, those might be things that could be cut. Tell us which are the things that are making a difference to them and their kids. And then here's how you can go about letting our local legislators understand that these are important to you, and if the funds are there, let's get this to the schools.
Gary?
Well, you know, I can see the scenario. I mean, I can see what will happen in the fall. People don't get involved until it affects them. You know, when it happens across the street, it's no problem. Parents coming to us in the fall, I know we'll do our best with the first, second, and third grade. But we saw it this last fall. We'll see it again if the scenario plays out. You know, why is my class, why are my kids in a class of 30? You know, this is just not appropriate. And it isn't appropriate. It isn't appropriate for any grade. And now is when we need the action. We need it now. We need the state funding. We need the appropriation. We talk about cutting, you know, Spanish and some of the programs that we see as a board that we know that this community wants a 21st century learning. They want us to move forward and not backwards. And these are the kinds of things that if we want our students to be able to perform and excel in the 21st century, that they need. They aren't fluff, they're essentials. And so we need it, and it isn't just for this year, but I don't want to come back and continue to fight. They need to set the priority and set it forward as this budget year and next budget year, and continue and set the trend to move forward into stable funding. And I'm not talking about exorbitant funding, I'm talking about essential funding. It's a matter of will. I've said it to Ken Reisner, the riser. You know, they keep saying the pie is only so big, and I know people don't like to hear it, but they also bake the pie. They create the size of that pie. And if the pie isn't big enough to meet the essential needs of the state, then they need to create a pie that will do it. And if it means raising taxes, if it means setting different priorities, they have the ability to do it, and they're not meeting the needs of the state right now.
Yeah, John?
So my question is, if we as a board want this public forum to happen, will Mary or Dave or someone talk to Grant Wood and the other local districts so we can consider having an open forum that talks specifically about these tax implications, funding implications, and the consequences to our school districts and our kids?
Dave and I will certainly talk about that. There's a little bit of complexity involved here because each of the districts, even in the surrounding area, have very different impacts than our impacts. So it's going to be very hard for a Grant Wood to facilitate a conversation like that. It should probably be more specific to our own district.
That's fine.
And I think with Dave's excellent presentation, by the way, you laid out everything that we wanted you to lay out and share with the public. This gives us the opportunity to now take it a step further, and he and I will have some conversation about what that might look like.
Great, I appreciate it.
Everything that's being said here, all 7 of us, 8 of us, all of you feel the exact same way. We're very frustrated. Unfortunately, I think this is going to be a trend unless we elect other people to our state house and our Senate. So I also think that when we talk about sharing, having conversations with other districts in the area, like the Big Idea School, sharing all of those resources and ideas. You know, the Spanish program is only offered in 3 districts in the state of Iowa. is a brand-new concept that our business community likes. And that's another group that we need to engage, is our business community. And then the Roosevelt Option, another new program. So those are the kind of things that distinguish us from other districts that attract students. And those, to me, are important and essential. So, I'm sorry?
Johnson Steam.
And Johnson Steam Magnet. So we cannot stop pushing on those, in my mind, in those innovative programs and revert back to a more traditional program, because it's,
My point.
yeah. So, all good thoughts, all good comments. Dave and I will think about it and bring something back. Okay, thank you. Good discussion, good comments. So we have one meeting in May, and then we have 4 graduations. So mark your calendars accordingly, and no more business before this board. We stand adjourned. Thank you.